Cybercrime laws vary widely by country, and those differences shape how incidents are investigated, prosecuted, and resolved across borders.
When a security event occurs, the technical facts may be similar everywhere, but the legal path that follows depends heavily on where systems are located, where victims reside, and which authorities have power to act.
These variations affect decisions about evidence handling, reporting timelines, and cooperation with law enforcement. For security professionals, this means legal context is not an afterthought layered on top of response, but a factor that must be considered from the start.
Understanding global legal diversity helps organizations avoid missteps that can complicate investigations or create additional legal exposure during already stressful situations.
Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to the CISS books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyberauthor.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series.
Legal systems around the world generally fall into several broad traditions, including common law, civil law, and religious law, and these traditions influence how cybercrime laws are written and applied. These systems differ in how authority is established, how rules are interpreted, and how much discretion judges have. In practice, this affects how predictable outcomes are and how flexible courts can be when addressing new types of digital misconduct. Cybercrime often evolves faster than legislation, so the underlying legal tradition shapes how gaps are handled.
For organizations operating globally, recognizing these foundational differences helps explain why similar conduct may be treated very differently in different jurisdictions. Common law systems rely heavily on judicial precedent and interpretation developed over time through court decisions. Statutes still matter, but judges play a significant role in shaping how laws apply to specific facts by referencing prior cases. This can create flexibility, allowing courts to adapt existing principles to new technologies and cybercrime methods. At the same time, it can introduce uncertainty, because outcomes may depend on how courts interpret precedent in novel situations. In common law environments, legal advice often emphasizes how courts have ruled historically, not just what statutes say on paper. For security teams, this means that legal risk assessments may evolve as new cases are decided. Civil law systems rely primarily on comprehensive codes and statutes as the main source of legal authority. Laws are written to be detailed and systematic, with the goal of covering situations explicitly rather than relying on judicial interpretation to fill gaps. Judges in civil law systems generally apply the code as written, with less emphasis on precedent as a binding force. This can provide clearer expectations about what conduct is illegal and what penalties apply, but it may be slower to adapt to new cybercrime techniques. When technology changes faster than legislation, organizations may find that laws lag behind practice. Understanding this dynamic helps explain why some jurisdictions update cybercrime statutes frequently, while others rely on broader interpretations.
Jurisdiction determines which courts and laws apply to a cyber incident, and it is one of the most complex aspects of global cybercrime.
Jurisdiction is not always obvious in digital environments because data, systems, users, and attackers may all be in different places.
Determining jurisdiction affects which authorities can investigate, which laws govern conduct, and which reporting obligations apply. Disputes over jurisdiction can delay investigations and complicate cooperation between organizations and law enforcement. For multinational organizations, jurisdictional analysis must often be done quickly during an incident to ensure that actions align with applicable legal requirements. Clear understanding of jurisdictional triggers reduces the risk of acting unlawfully while trying to respond responsibly.
Jurisdiction can be based on several factors, including physical location, nationality, and the effects of harm, and different countries emphasize these factors differently.
Location-based jurisdiction focuses on where systems are hosted or where the act occurred.
Nationality-based jurisdiction may assert authority over citizens or companies regardless of where conduct takes place. Effects-based jurisdiction looks at where harm is felt, such as where victims reside or where services are disrupted. Cybercrime often triggers multiple jurisdictional claims simultaneously, creating overlapping authority.
Security leaders must be prepared for situations where multiple regulators or law enforcement agencies assert interest in the same incident.
Extradition governs the transfer of suspects between countries, and it depends on treaties, agreements, and political considerations. Even when cybercrime is clearly illegal in multiple jurisdictions, a suspect may only be prosecuted where extradition is possible. Extradition treaties define which crimes qualify, what evidence is required, and what protections apply to the accused. Differences in legal standards, penalties, or human rights protections can prevent extradition, even when wrongdoing is established. This reality shapes how cybercriminals operate and how law enforcement prioritizes cases. For organizations, extradition limitations influence expectations about whether perpetrators will ever face prosecution. Mutual legal assistance frameworks support cross-border evidence requests and cooperation between governments during investigations. These mechanisms allow authorities to request data, records, or testimony located in another country through formal channels. Mutual legal assistance processes are often slow and procedural, reflecting the need to respect sovereignty and legal protections. Delays can be frustrating during fast-moving cyber investigations, but bypassing these processes can create legal violations. Organizations may be asked to preserve data or respond to lawful requests as part of these frameworks. Understanding how mutual assistance works helps set realistic expectations for investigation timelines and outcomes. Cybercrime statutes typically address offenses such as unauthorized access, fraud, extortion, and disruption of services, but definitions and thresholds vary widely. Some jurisdictions criminalize mere access without authorization, while others require proof of harm or intent. Fraud statutes may cover digital deception broadly or focus on specific financial mechanisms. Extortion laws may include ransomware explicitly or rely on older concepts adapted to digital contexts. Service disruption offenses may address denial of service attacks, interference with critical infrastructure, or sabotage of communications. These variations affect charging decisions and the likelihood of prosecution, even when technical behavior appears similar.
Laws also define required levels of intent, such as negligence, recklessness, or willfulness, and these distinctions matter greatly in cyber cases.
Negligence focuses on failure to meet a reasonable standard of care, while recklessness involves conscious disregard of known risk. Willfulness requires intentional violation of the law or deliberate harmful action. The required intent level influences what evidence must be gathered and how cases are argued. For organizations, intent standards affect potential liability when incidents result from poor controls rather than malicious action. Clear understanding of intent thresholds helps security teams align controls and documentation with legal expectations. Evidence rules differ significantly by region, affecting what information is admissible and how investigations must be conducted. Some jurisdictions impose strict requirements on how digital evidence is collected, preserved, and presented to maintain chain of custody. Others allow more flexibility but still require reliability and authenticity. Differences in privacy law can restrict what data may be accessed or shared during investigations. Improper evidence handling can undermine otherwise strong cases, leading to dismissal or exclusion. Security and incident response teams must align technical practices with evidentiary standards to support potential legal action.
Data localization and data sovereignty laws further complicate cybercrime response by affecting where data may be stored, accessed, and disclosed. Some countries require certain data to remain within national borders or impose restrictions on cross-border access. These laws can conflict with incident response needs, especially when centralized monitoring or global teams are involved. Organizations must balance rapid response with compliance obligations to avoid secondary violations. Sovereignty concerns also influence how governments respond to foreign investigations involving local data. Awareness of localization requirements is essential for lawful evidence handling and cooperation. International standards and conventions seek to promote alignment in cybercrime law, but they do not eliminate national differences. These efforts encourage countries to adopt common definitions, cooperate in investigations, and modernize statutes. However, adoption is uneven, and interpretations vary based on local legal traditions and priorities. Political considerations, resource constraints, and cultural factors also influence enforcement. As a result, global consistency remains limited despite shared threats. Organizations cannot assume uniform treatment of cybercrime across borders, even when international agreements exist. In conclusion, variation in global legal systems directly affects how organizations plan for incident response, investigation, and disclosure. Differences in legal tradition, jurisdiction, and intent standards shape what actions are lawful and effective during a cyber event. Extradition limits, mutual legal assistance processes, and evidence rules influence expectations about accountability and resolution. Data localization and sovereignty laws add additional layers of complexity to technical response. International cooperation improves alignment but does not remove national distinctions. When security planning accounts for these legal realities, organizations respond more confidently and avoid compounding technical incidents with legal missteps. Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.